At the northern end of Kosciuszko National Park, fog settles on the Currango Plain, shrouding one of the dramatic sights of the high country.
These horses to the people of the mountains are part of the culture of the mountains, and the people surrounding them have a great passion for them.
The presence of these charismatic animals in this otherworldly place has inspired poets, artists, filmmakers, and passionate lobbyists who have the wild horse as their totem.
They demonstrate the connection of our past and our identity, I guess.
But when the fog lifts, the spell breaks, revealing a landscape colonised by horses, trampling this fragile environment.
The problem is astronomical now, to the point where the number of horses are really threatening the integrity of the park.
There is nothing remotely poetic about the conflict swirling around these animals.
From my point of view, I'm a lover of the mountains. I love horses too, but for the preservation of that ecology, good science rather than romantic bullshit should be listened to.
This isn't a story just about horses. This is about people and emotion, and a debate about what it means to be Australian.
I feel that all our problems are cultural, and this is a culture war. This is where they want to dominate what they think Australia is, and I want Australians to love this land and our species and become custodians and carers of that.
Well, I can tell you this, the Brumby advocates won't give up. And as far as we're concerned, the Brumbies will remain in the mountains.
Tonight on Four Corners, the fight for Australia's high country. It's a battle over what we celebrate and preserve. Disagreement has descended into disdain, abuse and threats. As combatants forge an environment where the landscape is diminished, where native animals and horses suffer, and where people are intimidated when they do their jobs or speak their minds. In an isolated valley deep in the snowy mountains, a group of tourists settle in for an alpine experience. Their guide is high country heavyweight Peter Cochrane, who runs a horse trek business that draws on the myth of the man from Snowy River.
There was movement at the station, for the word had passed around that the colt from Old Regret had got away. And enjoying the wild bush horses, he was worth £1,000, so all the cracks had gathered to the fray. All the trained native riders from the station. If you read that poem, The Man from Snowy River, though it is fictional to a degree, but it expresses a great bonding and a great spiritual connection between these people and this culture that's in the mountains.
When I was 10 years old, I got given a box of books called The Silver Brumby. So I was 10 years old and I first read those books. I still have them now and I'm 53. So this has been a dream a long time in the making.
Even in summer on these high mountain plains, the nights are cold and clear. The next morning, time to saddle up.
All aboard, folks. Mount up, let's go.
These are familiar trails to former Nationals MP Peter Cochrane. He was raised on a nearby property. Each summer, his family grazed their cattle on these plains.
Well, at the times we were mustering, as a child, we used to come up into the park and spend time in the huts, camping out in the bush. So I became a part of the cultural experience of coming up here and living with the people in the huts in the mountains, you know, during the summer, and still do it today.
Cattle grazing was banned in the park decades ago, creating bitter divisions between environmentalists and graziers. The fight over brumbies is the latest frontier for these mountain communities.
I'm going to speak out on their behalf, and if I need to do that to protect the lifestyle and the cultural identity of these people that live around the mountains, I'll do it. And whatever life I've got left in me, I'll fight for them.
Just a few kilometres from the horse riding camp is Currango Homestead, a former grazing property that's now tourist accommodation.
First day was great, went to the Blue Water Holes.
Melbourne lawyer Ian Dunn has been coming here for 50 years.
My being has been greatly affected by currango. Currango has been a feature of my life since at least the early 70s.
Ian Dunn is among a group of volunteers who help look after the property. Chasing trout in Currango Creek is one of his great joys. But his secret fishing spot has been transformed by horses.
There's no grass, is there? The grass is an inch high. Piles of manure every 20 metres. The banks of Currango Creek completely trodden down. The creek is twice as wide as it used to be, half as deep. The water in it is, instead of being gin clear, you can't even see the bottom. The erosion caused by the horses is just dramatic.
He's witnessed a population explosion.
Look to your left, you can see horses. Right in front of you, you can see 100. Up to your right, you can see another 50 or 100. Many of them with infants with them. So they're breeding quickly, and I suppose that's one of the differences. In the last 2 years, population will have increased by about 40%.
These are not Banjo Patterson's elusive wild bush horses. Some so tame they graze on the front lawn at Currango.
How can you do this in a national park? It's not a national park with scenes like we're seeing now. Have the decency not to call it a national park, call it the Currango Horse Park.
Pam OBrien was an area manager for the National Parks and Wildlife Service until she retired just a few months ago. She's passionate about horses and native animals, like the broad-toothed rat, which was once common here.
Broad-toothed rat's this gorgeous little rat-like creature that doesn't bite and doesn't smell. It's really cute, and they make these little grass runways. And we could always go along this certain part of the park, in the southern part, and show people the runways and how they lived and everything. Well, we were there for nearly 2 days and we did not find one runway. All we saw was horse damage.
With decades on the ground in Kosciuszko, former rangers like Pam OBrien and Paul Hardy remember what this country was like with fewer horses.
We've got a creek environment here which normally would be covered up with vegetation. It's been trampled and there's no vegetation whatsoever on the creek environment. And in contrast, we've got We've got the sphagnum bog on this side, which you can see in some places where it's already been starting to be opened up by horses. That's what it should look like. There should be, you know, thick sphagnum bog covering the creek right up there.
And there's a couple of the culprits just around the corner there.
There is. There's usually a few horses up here, and if we were to go up there, you'd see this is the same all the way up, that cover on the creek has been destroyed. It's disheartening. It's totally disheartening. Something's gone so badly wrong that all our efforts seem to be now relegated to being second to a feral horse.
It's really sad, especially when, in my career, when you work to look after the park and all the species in the park, and I've left and it's in a much worse condition than when I started.
In some places, the damage is so bad, rangers are building enclosures to protect endangered native animals. This fence line guards the last place of refuge of a native fish species, the stocky galaxius.
The staff are identifying areas that need to be fenced, the really critical areas that are having a lot of impact. It's like a zoo, having little enclosures that people could come to. And if you want to see a broad-toothed rat, well, in Kosciuszko National Park, we have these little remote zoos that you can come and have a look at these animals in. It's ridiculous.
Exactly how many horses are in the park is hotly contested between the opposing sides.
I'm talking about north of the Surrey Mountains Highway. I'd say probably in the vicinity of less than 2,000.
My view is that there are, give or take, probably 3,000 to 4,000 horses in total of the park.
So right now, there's probably 16,000, 17,000 horses.
It'll be more like 20,000 by the time we get around to doing anything about it.
It's easy to drive or walk across vast areas and not see a horse, and that doesn't mean that they're not there.
Okay, coming up.
To get a more accurate estimate of the horse population, you must take to the air.
Beautiful, beautiful plains of Tennessee. Amazing.
You can already see the mobs of horses?
Yeah, easily. Yep. Have a look through here. Look at what, the mobs we've got running through this area.
Yeah.
Any census of the park must somehow tally the horses you don't see. A complex method called distance sampling is used. The number of horses counted by aerial spotters is multiplied using a formula that takes into account animals hidden by trees and terrain.
As I said, it's not a haphazard method, it's a proven method. They've used it for many, many years, not to just count horses, but to count feral pigs, feral goats, and it works.
Based on a 2020 aerial survey, national parks estimate a population of more than 14,000 horses. Scientists say numbers are growing by up to 20% a year.
People, to believe these counts, do have to rely a little bit on the fact that the people conducting them are qualified, are professionals. They're getting their work peer-reviewed by people internationally who are, independent scientists who are saying, yep, this is correct, so we should trust it.
And a little bit of a climb.
These numbers are completely rejected by horse advocates.
Fact is that the horse has been substantially reduced in number. Any claim of 14,000 horses is absolute nonsense. One of the problems is that those who are producing these figures don't get up there like we do, out right in amongst them all the time, and know the horses individually by name. Yeah, we don't trust the science, and science has been corrupted by politics in a whole range of fields, and that's one of them.
Lower the batter as we go up here, Matt. Copy.
The figure of 14,000 has been accepted by the New South Wales government. It has signed off on a plan to reduce the number of horses to 3,000 within the next 5 years.
This one directly below us, yeah.
Animals will either be trapped and rehomed, shot in the park, or sent to the abattoir. The quickest method of controlling numbers, shooting from a helicopter, has been ruled out.
I see it from the perspective of the country, and they're not meant to be there. They're a hard-hoofed, invasive species. They're not endangered. You know, there's 90% of Australia you can have a horse on, though. There's no need to have one in the national park, that's for sure.
There's no reason why we have to destroy our natural and Indigenous heritage in order to keep a few feral horses up in the mountains.
This is the spectacular Lower Snowy River. It's a vast wilderness that stretches all the way to Victoria and beyond. It's where parts of the Man from Snowy River poem and the Silver Brumby books were set, and for that reason it has great emotional power to horse supporters. And it's valued for its pristine environmental state, for plants and animals that are found nowhere else, and for the fact that there isn't a residence as far as you can see. Nobody lives here. But it is contested territory. This group of environmentalists is about to set off on the Lower Snowy River.
I'm really excited because it's my first time in this upper part of the river and in this Myadbo wilderness area, which is really special.
Now you need it sort of skinny up this end.
For some on the trip, this is more than a holiday. Professor Jamie Pittock is an environmental scientist at the ANU. Also on the journey is Andrew Cox, the head of the environmental activist group, the Invasive Species Council.
Look, I've really wanted to get down the Snowy River, and who better person to go with than Richard Swain.
Richard Swain is a veteran river guide and environmental campaigner.
I can see by the way they pack their boats, this is a good crew. Already, that's promising.
They film their journey. It begins with an 8-hour scramble past unnavigable rapids.
This is real Man from Snowy River country. This is the pine-clad ridges, the rugged mountains. This is the Snowy River. The men and women that came in here with the stock, they were fantastic horsemen, fantastic stockmen. It's a rich history, but it wasn't great for country. It's destroyed this land and it's changed it. And to continue with leaving just feral horses on the land, this land cannot recover from that era.
They are dismayed by what they see.
The damage, the plants that are missing, the erosion, the seed heads chewed off, everything, the silt in the water, the lack of native animals. It's a sad, sad picture that you see when you know what you're looking for.
I'm particularly worried by the feral horses systematically eating out particular plants that are so important for the ecology of this place. One example is the common reed, or Phragmites, that grows along the edge of the river. I've just spent 5 days floating down the Snowy River, and the only places these reeds grow are where the horses cannot reach.
You know, they're grazers, so they're removing grasses and bushes selectively, and many of these are the homes to animals which are only found in these places. Things like the northern and southern corroboree frog, the alpine sheoak skink.
Richard Swain, Andrew Cox and Jamie Pittock, part of the Reclaim Kosci environmental campaign, are among the loudest voices, calling for the removal of horses as quickly as possible. They believe the management plan doesn't go far enough.
We need to accept aerial culling. If we lose that as a tool in the box, then we're buggered. And at the moment, the best weapon we have to reduce these feral herbivores is aerial culling. And it's the most humane method. And we need to clean Australia up of feral plants and animals.
Their unequivocal stance has put them in the sights of horse advocates. On pro-Brumby Facebook pages, some with tens of thousands of supporters, Swain, Pittock and Cox are the enemy. Some of the attacks posted by members of these groups are vulgar, others are barely veiled death threats. I would like to use a double-barrelled shotgun on them and then load these evil morons into a truck and dump them. I am very wicked. Lol. Now to take these cretins out would be my dream. If I has the money, I would put a price on their heads. Hope someone might do it for free. The only exterminations should be the Reclaim Kosci mob. Any ideas? Richard Swain in particular gets under the skin of some horse supporters. Violent threats extend to his wife and children. Can someone not take him into the forest for a walk and not come back out with him? Let's cull Swain, be done with it, if only that easy. How about we hunt you and your family down to be shot? Shut up or you will be shut up permanently.
Growing up around here, the colonial crowd feel that they are the mountain men and women and they have a monopoly over what this place is. I guess I'm a threat. I've got a leg to stand on. I am a river guide in the parks. I am born and bred here. I am of Aboriginal heritage. So they see that as a threat to their argument.
Some attacks by members of online community groups focus on Swain's business. Richard Swain, owner of Alpine River Adventures, only agenda is to cull every single Brumby to drive his business agenda. Spread the word now on all various local pages. Can I nominate Richard Swain for the Jindy Notice Board's Dickhead of the Month?
Our business has been targeted. We can't brand our vehicles anymore because they have been vandalised and they will be vandalised. So the horse track mobs, they can drive around with the signage all over their vehicles and advertise themselves, but I certainly couldn't. Our cars do get, flat tyres and stickers put all over them, save the Brumby stickers, and that was getting worse. So after the second lot of flat tyres, it was pretty obvious that things could get worse and dangerous. So we sold one of our vehicles and we've unbranded all the rest.
To suddenly see this degenerate into almost madness, where the argument gets to the point of threatening people in the community and people that people know, friends, neighbours, and not, threatening each other or not speaking up, being afraid to sort of be involved in a debate. You've gone from a situation of protecting a unique park to almost anarchy, all of a sudden it's, what the hell has happened here?
It's become quite divisive. We have had staff threatened at work and it's made it very difficult, and I know that a lot of the staff don't like walking around town in their uniforms, and there's been procedures put in place in the office to protect them from a lot of that passion or threats from the pro-Brumby community.
I think that the pro-horse lobby are our modern-day environmental terrorists. They're terrorising the environment by promoting the horses remaining and destroying it, and they're terrorising the people who care for the environment, such as the National Park staff.
The New South Wales National Parks and Wildlife Service keeps a log of threatening phone calls and emails sent to staff. In internal memos, the Parks Service has assured staff it is taking action to enhance the security of its local work sites and safety of staff while at work. But that interactions with New South Wales Police in seeking intervention in the matters have been difficult and relatively unsuccessful. Parks Management has recommended risk assessments and counselling to protect staff.
I suppose the worst examples are threats on Facebook mostly, and threats to people's kids at school is probably the worst. And, that can have a big impact on the staff that are working there. They're just trying to do their job and trying to look after the park and not feeling safe.
They are brutal about how they deal with people. They intimidate, they threaten, and they care more about the horses than everything, including people.
It's clear this stoush is about much more than horses.
If National Parks and Wildlife Service feel as though they've been threatened, well, look at it from the other side. The people who their whole lifestyle has been changed by the Snowy Mountain scheme, the ski industry, the invasion of people into their areas all the time as tourists. And some people see that as being an offence to them. So think about the people who have been affected by government policy all the time, where you see a massive Snowy Mountains development wrecking the land all over the place at the same time as they're trying to remove a few brumbies out of the park. These are the things that develop the anger. It's not me that's developing the anger. I'm identifying it.
Peter Cochrane uses Facebook to call for action against his opponents. The Invasive Species Council is an invasive species, therefore should be immediately eradicated. Time for gloves off, Brumby supporters. You know where your enemies are. ALP, Greens and shooters, fishers and farmers. Shooters kill Brumbies. Reclaim Kosciuszko Park organisation are a bunch of frauds. Let's expose their backgrounds one at a time. Peter Cochrane has a direct line to favoured media outlets and hasn't held back in his attacks.
The fact is that Andrew Cox and the Reclaim Kosci advocates are telling barefaced lies. There were never 20,000 horses there were never 10,000, there was never 14,000. It is an absolute barefaced lie and they know it.
This has become such a toxic debate that people in parks are frightened to do their jobs and people are certainly frightened to speak their minds about this issue. Do you accept any responsibility for the level of anger and resentment that swirls around this issue of horses in the park?
No, I accept no responsibility for it because the reason that the conflict exists is the intransigence of the National Parks and Wildlife Service and the government to listen to the people. And if they don't listen to the people, then anger will develop. And if a leader emerges and I'm the leader, I'll take the consequences of it. And don't let anybody lay blame on me for the anger of people, which has been spread over several generations in their attitude towards National Parks and Wildlife Service. This presentation we put together, it's taken us a couple of weeks.
At this meeting in the town of Cooma, Peter Cochrane and his allies planned their ongoing strategy to preserve both horse riding and brumbies in the park.
We ruled out aerial shooting entirely, and with regards to ground shooting, totally ruled out.
This ex-National Party MP has had remarkable success in influencing government policy.
The thing that they left out was the no mention of the recreational horse riding within the park.
And I think we acknowledged that, horse riders actually have a significant part to play in the park.
In 2018, years of lobbying culminated in the passing of an unprecedented piece of legislation by the New South Wales Parliament, the so-called Brumby Bill. For the first time in Australia, a feral animal was protected in a national park.
I spent a lot of time lobbying both sides of the House, including the crossbenchers. Because I'd been a former member, I knew what the way to go about it. And I used my skills with my knowledge of the Parliament and everything else to try and persuade them to support the bill when it went through the House with support.
You told one of your followers that you drafted it.
I drafted the notes, yeah. I did, and that was a misstep on my part. There's no question. I shouldn't have put the word legislation. I should have put notes. But I drafted notes.
It's absolutely gobsmacking that a Wild Horse so-called Heritage Act can be railroaded in on top of 50, 60 years of thorough research, deliberate legislation to create one of the world's great national parks, and then crass National Party politics can totally prostitute that process and railroad in an act that suits a very small minority in a totally damaging way to the ecology in favour of a feral species. It's just absolutely gobsmacking, and it's cynical abrogation of all good government process.
Alongside Peter Cochrane, activist Lisa Caldwell has been a key figure in the fight to protect horses. Lisa Caldwell grew up in Sydney, but moved here after falling in love with the mountains and a mountain man. With the passion of a convert, she's embraced the horse-centric world mythologised in The Man from Snowy River.
I think the movie said it right when they said it was paradise 1 minute and next minute's hell trying to kill you.
She's become a custodian of high country history and culture, symbolised by the horses.
They demonstrate the connection of our past and our identity, I guess. And they're the last connection. There's a few mountain huts that still exist, but you know, if it wasn't for the horses, there's nothing left to prove that we existed. They're the last piece.
Like many, she believes successive governments have destroyed the mountain way of life. For Lisa Caldwell, it's personal. Her husband's family was among those stripped of cattle grazing leases in Kosciuszko.
I think that's a lot of the frustration. When their livelihoods and their history was removed from the mountains at the same time as their towns were being flooded for the Snowy scheme, being Jindabyne and Adaminaby, they were being kicked out. Their history was being removed from with their homes, etc., and yet the ski resorts were moving in.
In high country towns like Cooma and Jindabyne and Adaminaby, there's not much public mention of the enormous national park that everyone's here to visit. What's celebrated is the taming of the wilderness. The horse and horsemen, the gold prospectors, even the trout introduced into local rivers. From the moment you enter the region, the Man from Snowy River and the wild bush horses are front and centre. They are an essential part of the local character. And knocking an icon off its plinth is deeply unpopular.
If you speak out and you're threatening a strongly held beliefs, some people are going to react, and I'm expecting that here. And I know others that have been fighting this for a while have copped some really nasty stuff, and which isn't any way to win an argument. Yeah, and kneeling down when you do a long blow.
Charlie Massey's connection to the past is embedded in Kosciuszko, in the hills north of the Kiandra goldfields.
I'd say 4 or 5 k's.
It's where his father grazed cattle each summer, sharing his lease with the Caldwell family.
I'm envious. I'd love to have been around in those days, but when the leases were taken off in the late 50s, 60s, my father was quite open about, look, the time had come. The stock were doing damage, we started to realise. And also, you know, droving for 2 weeks with increasing tourist traffic and stuff. You know, this time, as far as he was concerned, and he wasn't bitter at all about losing the leases. He realised it was time.
Charlie Massey remembers what a big deal this was for mountain families.
Particularly closer to the mountains, a lot of the old Monero families and newcomers as well. There's still a lot of bitter feelings. One of the leading ecologists whose work led to the formation of the Kosciuszko National Park. I know after the leases were taken away in the 50s, he was beaten up in pubs and his children victimised at school. And those feelings still run on. I mean, it was a threat to identity and to livelihood.
Massey is as local as they come. He's a lifelong grazier who runs around 3,000 head of sheep on a property near Cooma and who was awarded an OAM for his services to the wool industry. He has a PhD for his research into regenerative methods of farming. To his expert eye, the damage done by horses is clear.
to then see some of Australia's rarest species and endangered species at huge risk now being compromised for this false view about these heroic animals that they've portrayed, when really they're just a feral animal doing huge damage.
He questions the motivation of some horse supporters.
For some, it's driven by pecuniary interests, whether it's horse riding or whatever, camping trips. For others, their sense of heroic image is embedded in the man from Snowy River, rugged, bushman, hard riding, hard drinking sort of thing. But none of it has any relevance to do with the ecology. I'm a lover of the mountains. I love horses too. But for the preservation of that ecology, good science rather than romantic bullshit should be listened to.
In Kosciuszko National Park, traps are being set to capture brumbies for removal or killing. Horses are lured with baits into enclosures like this.
When the horses enter the traps, they go chasing either the molasses or the salt or some of those. They hit the tripwire, which releases these gates. The gates fly back and the horses are locked in and gone for all time.
Horse activists like Alan Lanyon remain utterly opposed to the removal of any brumbies.
So we say at this point in time that there is no substance to the National Parks and Wildlife Service's claim for a need for a trapping program.
Traps have been tampered with in the past and horses set free, and Alan Lanyon expects that to continue.
Part of me says that we should be doing it. Part of me says that we should have people on the ground here. Every time they set these traps, we'll come in and set them off. We'll come over the hill and set the traps off until such time as the Environment Minister and National Parks and Wildlife Service want to sit down and talk, not with a put-up committee, but with a committee that has the interests of A, the national parks, and B, the horses at heart.
Will you be part of that, Alan? Will you come in and open the traps and help pull them down?
At this point in time, I couldn't say what my intentions would be.
That means, though, that the plan that's been so long in the making, there's been so much contention about it, but if a group like yours stops horses being trapped, the plan won't work at all, will it?
No, but it might force some action into making the plan work.
A few fortunate horses, like this Kosciuszko stallion, will find a new home. He's come to the property of animal welfare vet Andrea Harvey.
He's coming here for a bit of handling and to be gelded, and then once he's recovered, he'll go to his new owner on a big property and be reunited with the rest of his herd.
She doesn't charge for this work. She's trying to save as many as possible.
It's a lot of work for one horse, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and especially for the stallions, because I guess that's why they sort of draw the short straw most of the time. And it's usually the older stallions that end up going to neckeries.
She has already taken 40 brumbies onto her own property. But most Kosciuszko horses won't be this lucky. Horses that have never been handled before require space and expert attention. But there are too few people like Andrea Harvey with the time and skill to care for them.
I think it would be a struggle to rehome a lot larger numbers. Ultimately, it's going to be saturated at some point. Not every horse is going to be rehomed.
If the plan is implemented, the vast majority of the horses in Kosciuszko National Park will be killed. Andrea Harvey has advised the New South Wales Government on the most humane ways of removal and culling.
Obviously, the trapping itself is a stress and the transport itself is a stress, and each of those steps, there's the potential for negative impacts on the horse. So if the horses are going to be killed, we want to make sure that there are as few welfare impacts as possible. So theoretically, killing them in the park would have fewer impacts. We're avoiding that process of transport. When we think about how the horses are going to be killed in the park, if that's what's happening, we have to, again, make sure that that can be done in a way that causes minimal distress and minimal pain.
Her position has made her a target of some of the most extreme horse supporters.
It's kind of flabbergasting that it happens from Brumby people, because I guess I'm putting my life really into trying to save as many Brumbies as I can and give them the best welfare that I can. And so when people accuse you of things related to, being a killer or causing cruelty, like that's... Yeah, it's really hurtful, really hurtful.
The bitter stoush over Brumbies in Kosciuszko, fuelled by old grievances and entrenched cultural positions, has led to a compromise plan that has satisfied neither side. An agonisingly slow removal process in the face of unrelenting resistance seems inevitable.
What happens next, Peter? The plan has become a reality. Horses will start to be removed. The rehoming market is saturated. Some horses are going to have to be killed. What's the next step?
Well, I can say this, the Brumby advocates won't give up. And as far as we're concerned, the Brumbies will remain in the mountains.
If horses are allowed to persist in these really sensitive areas, they're going to destroy them. The park is under significant threat from lots of different angles. There's all these pressures on Kosciuszko National Park, and addition of horses is just too much. So the integrity of the park will suffer, and we'll lose species and ecosystems, and we won't get them back.
A national park should be something we're proud of, and it should be a joyous thing for all Australians, and the rangers should be looking after it and caring for it as it should be. But for one group of people who got hung up on some books and a poem and a movie and like wearing a certain costume, we're all suffering. This entire community is suffering because of that.